community, when this happened, everyone was talking about it. I came to the story later, after both the mother and son had passed away. Um, and what I found in the court file and in speaking to her friends and the people who knew what was going on in her last days is that there was this desire not to let the record stand as it was. That even behind such shocking headlines, there are families who try to hold on to each other. Sorry. And so, I think if you work in these communities, that is the kind of I wouldn't call it an ugly truth, I think it's a beautiful truth. That, in these moments when all these shocking headlines do happen, there is still this emotional backdrop. There is still a way to see how, society kind of strands you on this path. And so, yeah, I guess I wanted to show that, a mother's love was involved here, but also that it is not infallible, and that, none of us are, we're kind of pushed to these choices.
Also, what hit me, especially about the story, is that it happened in this community of San Gabriel Valley where I also grew up, where I know a lot of you grew up, but it's also the Asian American or the Asian immigrant community. And this community has a very special way of not talking about things. And how did that factor into why you wanted to bring this out into the light?
We're speaking of shame, right? I was a reporter for the San Gabriel Valley for the Los Angeles Times, covering Asian American communities of all kinds for more than a decade. And telling Asian American stories is basically like fighting an invisible battle against shame. And shame is what kind of suffocates the people who are suffering in silence. And it shows up in all these different ways in our community. When I was writing about like a nursing home, a Japanese American nursing home that had seen the most deaths due to coronavirus transfers in the state, you note that in the Rafu Shinpo, none of the obituaries list the cause of death as coronavirus, which makes this targeting of this community harder to see. This shows up in different ways in each different Asian American community. Generally, yeah, it just makes things very difficult, and it makes it hard to to make sense of these, because the way you find and heal from things, I think, is to kind of make sense of them and tell stories and bring these issues into the light. If left to our own devices, what our community prefers to do is to just allow it to pass silently into the night, to never touch those emotions again because they're too painful, and to let them sort of remain as a wound. So opening the wound is painful, but it's also, I think, necessary to heal.
Very well said. You've had time to sit with this film and watch it several times and represent it several times. Do you feel like you knew this family a little bit better because of this film?
Yeah, I'm so proud of this film and being able to see what this film expresses, what I wanted to with the story, which is that these people did care for each other. As dark as the film is, I would argue my story was darker. Like this allowed room for the bright spots in their life. This allowed us to see the characters in ways that I couldn't show, and I'm very grateful for that.
how has this film in coming out, by the way, these are just special screenings. We've had one in, opening in New York and Los Angeles, and in January 9th, it's gonna be out everywhere, although in limited theaters. How has the film being out on film so far impacted your life in any way?
Yeah, it's a really incredibly rare thing for anyone to have a story adapted into a film, and to have it with such a dedicated cast who gave so much of themselves to it. It is very, very moving to see, you know, and it's been a kind of education and how in this, you know, industry, there's a lot of really passionate people just who are just trying to make something beautiful and have that be their reward, you know, which is a lot like journalism, where the rewards are also in the satisfaction of what is made rather than the compensation. But personally, I think my life really changed when I just wrote the original story and became identified with it. This story was read by a lot of people. A lot of people knew this story. And because of that, I couldn't let it be the only thing I wrote on this subject. It was like a incredible responsibility that I was honestly terrified of and struggled to be equal to in the moment. So, you know, every time cases like this in these communities are not as rare as you might imagine. You know, 1 month after my story came out, a mother was killed by her son in the neighboring community of San Gabriel. You know, I have seen, you know, mothers and sons and fathers. Basically, there are a lot of different cases that come up, and every time they come up, I try to do some reporting on them too. And I try to, and I don't tell all of the stories because that's not what's, you know, what's called for all of the time. But I'm still working on it, and I just know that, yeah, I think like when you tell the story with such pain, with such sort of pain in it, you know, you also have to follow up, and so that's just what I'm trying to do.
It's fantastic. I'm also very proud of our community. Every time we have a screening, everybody shows up. So thank you for showing up, and thank you for showing entertainment industry, our communities, that stories like this are important. Asian American stories are also very important. What do you want audiences to take away after seeing this film?
It's tough. I guess I can only speak to how telling this story changed me, right? And you know, seeing the influence of mental health and mental illness in our society as a motivation, it changes your vision. It kind of gives you visibility into this whole spectrum of the world that you know, this expansion of your empathy that it grows to include the person who is being, you know, honking at you in the middle of a road rage incident. You know, it includes like your parents who might be saying something abusive to you. You know, it includes like, it's just a way of looking at hurt, you know. So I think like what I would hope is that, like, you know, in this movie, if you find yourself in a kitchen, like what at the party, you know, what will you say? You know, how will you act differently? You know, if your friend comes along and he's telling, you know, one depressing story after another, are you going to make room in the conversation, or are you going to be part of, you know, him not speaking about that? You know, and so the potential of this movie is just in how we might act differently after we see it. So, yeah, that's what I would hope for.
Thank you, and I think that's a wonderful spot for us to wrap up with. Frank, thank you very much, because you have another engagement to go to about Rosemead, right?
Yes, gonna go to Culver City.
So Frank, you're excused. So